We're officially past the halfway point of 2024, so it's time to take a look at the best of the best from this year so far. I had 208 plays of 133 unique games in the first 6 months of the year, which is not nothing, that's for sure. So if you want to know my favorite games of the year so far, then might I suggest? Hi, I'm Alex from Might I Suggest a Game, a channel devoted to helping you find your perfect board game. Today, like I mentioned before, we'll be talking about my favorite games of the year so far, and let me tell you, it's been a doozy. If you haven't seen one of my top games videos before, I like to do things a little bit differently. Basically, I've got 6 different awards categories that I use to rank games. First is Top Table Hogger, which is the game that I played the most in this period of time. Then it's my top game off the back of the shelf, which helps me highlight older games that no one's talking about anymore, but that are still so good. Next is my top underrated gem, where I talk about more obscure or hard to find games that you should be seeking out. Then it's my top second date game, which is a game that I've played once, enjoyed, but haven't had a chance to get to the table again. Here's to hoping they say yes. Anyways, the 5th category is the top new game in my collection, which features games that I like so much that I bought them, which, given the rate at which I receive and play new games, that's really saying something. And lastly is a classic. It's my top overall game. Now that you know the categories, I'd love to hear what games you'd be nominating. Let me know your picks in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell button so you can get notified when I post new content. Anyways, let's get into it. Will one of my favorite games of the year so far be the perfect game for you? Let's find out, shall we? Alright, first up is my top Table Hogger. It's the game I've played the most this year so far, and that game is Ticket to Ride Legacy Legends of the West. Ticket to Ride Legacy, as its name suggests, is Ticket to Ride's take on a legacy campaign game from Days of Wonder. It plays up to 5 players, but I played it at 3, and well, we liked it so much, we finished the whole thing. The campaign plays out over the course of 12 sessions that each add in new mechanics, new destinations, and new objectives to the classic Ticket to Ride games that we all know and love, and let me tell you, things towards the end start to get pretty crazy. Obviously, I can't get into too much detail without revealing spoilers left and right, but I will say that I enjoyed the ramp up of the game and how it really continued to build upon itself, both physically with the map continually expanding and theoretically with the new concepts being introduced that I might have to start house ruling into my base game of Ticket to Ride. One of the main things that I really enjoyed is the fact that none of the sessions ever took that long. I mean, it's just a game of Ticket to Ride, and even though the new additions add some fun and exciting mechanics, the goal of the game never changes. It's always just get your cards, place your trains, and get to your destinations before your cars run out. You'll get a few more trains and a few more destinations each time out, but really none of the sessions felt like they dragged on too long, because it is ultimately a race to see who can use their cars most efficiently. The one thing to note though is that as the game progresses, you'll find that setup can certainly become more and more time consuming, so you might consider packing the final few sessions into the same night so you don't have to reset up and re-remember all the rules. Either way, this game is great, and it feels totally different because most legacy games of this weight are cooperative, but in Ticket to Ride Legacy, you're constantly tallying up your points for a super high cumulative score at the end. And the tricky part is, after every session, you'll put your score sheet in your vault, so you never actually really know where everyone is at until the final numbers are revealed at the end of the campaign. This means no one ever feels completely out of it, and even if they were, they wouldn't know, which means that every session renews that fresh sense of competition. I mean, I only won 2 of the 12 sessions we played. I kept coming in second, which if you've played, you'll know that's basically the worst spot to be in. But I still managed to pull off the win in the end due to my bonuses in several other objective categories. So if you're a big locomotive enthusiast or a big Ticket to Ride enthusiast, or if you're just looking for a super manageable legacy game that feels fresh and familiar at the same time, then might I suggest Ticket to Ride Legacy Legends of the West. Alright, next up is the top game off the back of my shelf. This is a game that I hadn't played in a while, but that I played recently and remembered, oh yeah, this game totally rips. And that game is War of the Ring 2nd Edition. War of the Ring 2nd Edition is a massive multi-hour dudes on a map game for 2 to 4 players where you line up on either side of the titular war and attempt to rewrite the history of Middle-earth on a table in your buddy's basement. Sounds epic, right? Anyways, I was super excited to get this one to the table again because I was finally able to christen my own personal copy of the game. Many moons ago, I had played this game at my good friend John's house back in Cincinnati, and we were having a blast, but unfortunately we had to cut the game short. Fast forward a few months and a brand new copy of the game shows up on my doorstep here in Portland. To my surprise, it's from John, and he says it's so we can have a copy to play when he comes to visit us on the West Coast. What a guy, right? Anyways, I kept it in the shrink wrap for 3 whole years, and finally, last month, he came to visit and we got to play War of the Ring again, and boy was it worth the wait. I think the thing that I love the most about War of the Ring is how deeply thematic it is. If you're deep in the lore of the rings like my friend John, or even if you just have an appreciation for the series like me, don't worry, I've seen the movies and I've read the books, okay? Then this will be way more than a game to you. Each action card you play and decision that you make in the game feels real because the visuals of Middle-earth have been so masterfully adapted into film, you can really imagine every battle happening like it did in the movies. Except this time, maybe the outcome will be totally different. What would have happened if the forces of men weren't able to hold off the siege at Minas Tirith? Or how would the Shadow armies have fared if Saruman got ambushed and wasn't able to muster any forces at Orthanc? Obviously, this isn't the way it happened in the books, but in our game, it did happen. And to me, that's where this game really hits the mark. You're literally rewriting history. I mean, it's fantasy history to be fair, but history nonetheless. And to be able to do that with one of my best friends was just priceless. As a side note, this is one of the reasons why I love board games, and I love to do what I do. Playing board games is so much more than just the game itself. It's the memories you make and the experiences you have together that really set it apart from any other hobby I've experienced. And I will say, this game does it better than most. War of the Ring is all about those big moments, those tense decisions, those crucial dice rolls. It's intense, it's intimate, it's exciting at every turn, and it's even better when you get to play it with your friends. So if you're a Lord of the Rings fanatic, or if you like big dudes on a map games with lots of really cool minis, or if you just want to share in the experience of creating new lore for an incredible fantasy world, then might I suggest War of the Rings 2nd Edition. Next up is my top underrated gem, and this one is reserved for games that aren't nearly as mainstream, but that still really made an impression on me, and as soon as I played this one, I knew it had to be on this list. It's Lightspeed Arena. Lightspeed Arena is a real-time space battle game for 1 to 6 players from Tablescope Games, and to be honest, I haven't had this much fun playing a 15-minute board game in a long time. In Lightspeed Arena, you'll be placing your spaceship tiles one at a time anywhere on the table, but the tricky part is you've only got a few seconds to get your ship into the perfect spot before you have to place your next one. The goal is to mine the asteroids and destroy your opponent's ships with your lasers, while also blocking incoming hits with your shields and making sure you don't accidentally shoot yourself. Think you can do all of that in a minute and a half? Yeah, me neither. But that's the fun of the game. Every time you think you've set up an awesome combo shot, you see someone else place a ship to take you out on the very next turn. It's crazy, it's chaotic, and the best part is it's over in less than 10 minutes, which means you can just run it back over and over again. Now you may be wondering, how could you possibly keep track of all these lasers firing around all over the place? Well, the folks at Tablescope have developed this amazing companion app that will just scan the entire battlefield at the end of the game and score everything one ship at a time. The app is so cool and so well done that it makes this board game feel almost like a video game. It's super interactive and it leads to so many laughs and also groans around the table when you accidentally blast your own ship into smithereens. Don't worry, it happens to the best of us. Anyways, it really pains me to relegate this game to the underrated gem category because in my opinion, this game should be on everyone's shelf. It's so fast and fun and it works with all types of gamers. The only problem is, as far as I know, it's only available through Kickstarter and the campaign has already ended. But you can sign up for updates about the game on their website, which I'll put a link for down below in the description, which will hopefully give y'all a second chance to pick this bad boy up because I promise you, it is totally worth it. So if the space battles in Star Wars are your favorite scenes, or if you want to shoot your friends with lasers but all the laser tag places around town have shut down, or if you just want a thrilling and chaotic real-time game that will have everyone at the table engaged and having a good time, then might I suggest Lightspeed Arena. Next is my top second date game, a game that I really enjoy but that I only got to play once so far. I'm really hoping to play this one again soon. It's Arcs. If you tuned into my most anticipated games video from earlier this year, you might remember that Arcs was at the top of my list for games that I was super excited to try out, and now that I've gotten to play it, all I keep thinking about is when I'm gonna play it again next. Arcs is a very funky trick-taking slash area control slash resource collection game for 2 to 4 players from Leader Games, and I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna take a few few more plays of this one to really wrap my head around it. There's a ton of stuff going on, but the core mechanic being a pretty straightforward trick-taking game helps ground it in a manageable decision space, especially since I'm a big fan of trick-taking games. But even if you're not a trick-taking junkie like me, I still think there's lots to love about this game. First off, in my opinion, it feels more accessible at first blush than its cousin Root. The variable player powers and asymmetrical factions that Leader Games is known for feel somewhat muted in the base game, allowing everyone to draft off of everyone else when learning it for the first time. And in that same vein, the core mechanics themselves are not inherently complicated, but rather it's the way that they interact with one another that really sets it apart and adds some clever complexity to the game. Basically what I'm saying is that it's easy to understand how to do things in arcs, but it'll take some time with the game to understand why, which is one of the main reasons that I desperately need to play this one again. I mean, I lucked out and got the W on my first playthrough, but I'm not really sure what exactly I did to get there. But the fact that I was able to play tactically as I was forming the first inklings of a long-term strategy and was still able to piece together enough points tells me that there are several paths to victory, and learning to manage your hand wisely and play the right cards at the right time is really critical. All in all, arcs will probably make your head spin on the first play, like it did mine, but all the cool things that you can do in the game, as well as the asymmetric powers in the Leaders and Lore pack, and the crazy campaign in the Blighted Reach expansion too, will have you coming back for more. Plus, I can never get over the awesome Kyle Farron artwork. I mean, just look at it.
Oh, would you look at this?
Yeah, well...
Would you look at that?
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of sci-fi space epics, or if you're a trick-taking fiend, or if you're just looking for a really clever and well thought out game that's unlike anything else I've ever played, then might I suggest Arcs. The next category is the top new game in my collection, and this one is a funny category because it really has a direct correlation to the success of this channel. The more this channel grows, the more games I get sent to me, which means I buy a lot fewer games than I used to. Now don't get me wrong, this is a great problem to have, and a big shout out to all of you who have supported this endeavor from the jump, but it's just funny because this category becomes narrower and narrower each time. But what it also means is that if I'm gonna shell out my hard-earned cash to add a game to my collection, it must be an absolute banger, and that's exactly what this next one is. It's Dropholter. Now, it's no secret that I've been an Oink Games stan for years now. I love how much strategy they pack into their signature tiny boxes, and I also love the variety of games they bring to the table. From fun party games to social deduction to dice rolling to strategic card games and everything in between. They're always trying new things, and I really love getting their games to the table because I know I'm in for a wild ride, and Dropholter is no different. Dropholter is a goofy and chaotic dexterity game for 2 to 5 players where you've got to hold a bunch of tiny objects in your hand. You'll flip a card, and then everyone has to drop the corresponding items as quickly as possible and be the first to grab the ghost. If you're the fastest, you'll get a bell, and the first one of 5 bells wins. Seems easy, right? Oh wait, that's right, I forgot to mention that when you win a bell, it goes into your hand as well, and if you ever drop a bell when you're fiddling around for another item, that bell is gone forever.
Forever. Forever. Forever.
This means that the closer people get to winning, the more careful they have to be with their hand, which means they're slower, which means it's harder for them to win. You know, you get the idea. Just absolutely genius game design and so hilariously fun. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of a reverse Ghost Blitz, which is one of my all-time favorites, but with a little less quick thinking and a little bit more dexterity involved. Dropholter is one of those games that's so simple that anyone could have created it, but how someone actually came up with the concept of it is beyond me. Either way, I'm so glad they did, and it's definitely become one of my go-to fillers for game night. So if you think you're good with your hands, or if you're a big Oink stan like me, or if you just need a speedy, small box game that you can learn in 2 minutes but that'll provide hours of entertainment, then might I suggest Dropholter. Alright, the last category is my top overall game so far this year, and this one goes to a game that's way more than just a game. It's Daybreak. Daybreak is a cooperative game about saving the planet for 1 to 4 players from CMYK Games, and when I say saving the planet, I'm not talking about Independence Day, saving the planet from aliens and all that. I'm talking about saving the planet from climate change, baby. We're talking carbon drawdown, we're talking pollution reduction, we're talking renewable energy sources, and all that good stuff. Anyways, I immediately had high expectations for this one because it was co-designed by one of the godfathers of cooperative games himself, Matt Leacock, best known as the designer of the classic Pandemic. Daybreak takes all the tension of Pandemic, the crises and the unpredictability, and it adds in some really cool tableau building mechanics that both improve the experience of player interaction, but also help to mitigate some of the quarterbacking issues that Pandemic and many other cooperative games suffer from. Because each player in Daybreak is busy comboing off on their own tableau, it's difficult to keep track of what everyone is capable of, which means that the discussion around the table stays more high level, with people asking for favors and help in certain areas instead of telling other players exactly what to do, and it's really up to you to solve your own little puzzle and manage your nation wisely. I love this type of agency in a cooperative game. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Spirit Island is so good, and I think Daybreak really captures the spirit of cooperation perfectly. But besides the gameplay being super solid and the production of the game being fantastic and eco-friendly at that, I think the real victory of this game is in the messaging. This game is ultimately about combating climate change, and I think it accomplishes something that no other piece of media would really be able to. I mean, the game is tough, and if you don't work together, you're pretty likely to lose, just like in real life. But with that being said, the game is also winnable. If you truly collaborate and spend the resources to improve your climate-saving technologies and give aid to the communities in crisis in your neighboring nations, then it's possible. You can save the world, just like we can in real life. After all of the talk of doomsday countdowns and the points of no return, Daybreak is the first piece of climate change messaging I've seen in a long time that is borderline optimistic. And really, I think that just speaks to the power of board games in general. Board games allow you to run simulations to see a future that has not yet been realized, whether that's epic battles in space or just fighting climate change at home. And to use that amazing ability for good, I think is the thing that just truly sets Daybreak apart. I've been constantly impressed by this game. It's one of my most played games so far this year, and I think most importantly, it has really stretched the boundaries of what a board game can be. So if you're passionate about the environment, or if you just desperately want this stunning cover in your collection, or if you just want a fun and conscious cooperative game that is as informational as it is challenging, then might I suggest Daybreak. Alright, thanks so much for sticking around for my top games of the year so far. I really hope you get to play all of the games that I just mentioned, and I'm also super curious to see what you would have nominated for these categories, so make sure to drop me a note in the comments. Anyways, thanks to everyone who supported this channel so far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep growing this channel and keep helping you find your perfect board game. Once again, this has been a Might I Suggest a Game production, and I'm Alex, your board game sommelier, signing off.